You're about to hear something that will either make you uncomfortable or wake you up so sharply that you'll never look at attraction, age differences, or feminine psychology the same way again. Because the truth is, women don't wait the way men think they do. They don't sit quietly, hoping, wishing, praying you'll magically read their mind and finally make a move. No, young women signal, they test, they observe. And if you don't understand the subtle language behind what they do, you'll miss opportunities that were already yours, opportunities she wanted you to take. Most men assume she's out of their league. Most men think she's too young, too beautiful, too social. And yet, the same woman they put on a pedestal is quietly watching an older man with a completely different lens, studying how he carries himself, how he talks, how he responds, how he doesn't rush. And it's in that stillness, that masculine steadiness, where her interest quietly blooms. But you will never notice it if you keep living inside the noise of your own self-doubt. So stay right here, because I'm about to break open what young women never say out loud, the subtle psychological cues they give, the micro behaviors they use when they're waiting for an older man to lead, and the exact moment they decide you're the one they choose, even over guys her age. If you leave now, you'll keep misreading the signs for the rest of your life. But if you stay with me until the end, you'll finally understand the deeper truth behind their behavior, and you'll never look at a young woman's attention the same way again. When you really study human behavior, you begin to see a pattern that very few people talk about openly. It's the reason some men walk into a woman's life and immediately shift the energy, while others do everything right and still remain invisible. And it all begins with one fundamental reality: a woman is drawn to a man who is complete without her, not half complete, not searching for emotional oxygen, complete. And this isn't about arrogance or pretending you don't care. It's about something deeper, something psychological, something philosophical. A man with inner fullness moves differently. He speaks with a tone that doesn't beg, his presence doesn't demand attention, and his energy doesn't cling. He is not performing. He is not chasing. He is not seeking permission to exist. And that is exactly why he becomes magnetic. Because when a woman encounters a man who is already rooted in who he is, she feels something rare: stability. Women don't articulate it in these words, but their bodies pick it up instantly. They feel the difference between a man who approaches them from emptiness and a man who approaches them from abundance. The empty man wants something from her. The abundant man offers something through him. And that is why he stands out without forcing anything. It's not the line he uses. It's not the confidence he tries to display. It's the internal completeness that shows up in every micro expression, every pause, every decision. Think about it. Most men approach women hoping she will fill a void. They want validation, attention, reassurance, emotional comfort. They want someone to confirm that they are worthy, desirable, masculine, valuable. And the moment a man tries to get that from her, she feels the subtle pressure. Even if he hides it behind jokes or charm, she senses his need, and need always repels. Not because women are cruel, but because emotional neediness signals instability. And instability cannot be trusted. But when a man approaches a woman with the energy of, "I am whole, I am steady, and I choose you from a place of fullness," everything changes. She relaxes, she opens up, she becomes more authentic, she feels safe in his presence, not because he says the right things, but because he doesn't need anything from her to feel complete. He's not trying to build a life through her, he's inviting her into a life he already owns, and that is a completely different emotional experience for a woman. Completeness is not loud. It doesn't need to be. It shows up in the way a man breathes, the way he handles pressure, the way he holds a boundary without raising his voice, the way he speaks slowly instead of rushing to fill silence. It shows up in the fact that he doesn't crumble when she tests him, doesn't fold when she pulls back, doesn't panic when she goes quiet. Women test men not out of manipulation, but out of instinct. They want to see whether the man can hold his emotional shape. And the man who is already complete within himself is unshakable. He doesn't collapse into insecurity because she doesn't validate him. His value is not on trial. And that's why he gets inside her mind effortlessly. She remembers the man who doesn't wobble when the world pushes him. She remembers the man who doesn't chase but still chooses. She remembers the man whose confidence is not an act, but an outcome of inner work. He becomes unforgettable, not because he tries to be, but because such men are rare. When a woman feels his emotional stability, she subconsciously sees him as a leader, a protector, a man with direction. That presence is intoxicating. It is grounding. It is attractive in a way that logic cannot explain. The irony is that many men assume women want the opposite. They think women want attention, sweet words, constant reassurance, dramatic passion. But the truth is women want depth, direction, and emotional certainty. They want a man who is not afraid of his own solitude, a man who is comfortable in his own skin, a man who can walk alone without feeling lonely. Because that man doesn't choose a woman out of desperation, he chooses her out of alignment. And a woman can feel the difference immediately. Completeness also shows up in how a man handles rejection or uncertainty. The emotionally incomplete man takes everything personally. He becomes reactive, defensive, needy, or cold. But the complete man simply adjusts. He respects the moment, respects the woman, and respects himself. He doesn't lose his center because someone doesn't choose him. His worth isn't negotiable. His identity isn't on the line. And this emotional strength creates a presence that women instinctively trust. When a woman senses a man's wholeness, she opens doors she would never open for anyone else. She shares more deeply. She reveals more honestly. She invests more willingly. Not because he forces it, but because his energy tells her, "You are safe here. I don't need you to complete me. I am inviting you into something solid." And that is the kind of man who enters a woman's mind without ever raising his voice. He becomes the standard she compares others to. He becomes the presence she returns to in her thoughts. He becomes the memory she can't shake, not because he tried to impress her, but because he showed her what a complete man looks like. So the real work isn't learning lines, tactics, or strategies. The real work is building yourself so deeply that your presence speaks before you do. Because a woman doesn't fall for words, she falls for the man behind the words. She falls for the energy that holds the words together. And if you want to become that man, start with this truth. A woman can only feel complete with a man who is already complete within himself. When you really observe the interactions between men and women, you notice something that most people overlook. Women rarely fall for the man who tries the hardest. They fall for the man who carries himself with a calm confidence that doesn't demand attention but naturally commands it. And the difference between the two is massive. The man who tries to impress is chasing an outcome. The man with calm confidence is simply being himself. One is performing, the other is present, and presence, real grounded presence, is far more powerful than performance will ever be. Most men mistake loudness for confidence. They think standing taller, speaking bolder, or acting excessively self-assured will make a woman feel something. But women don't fall for men who are trying to convince the world they are confident. Women fall for men who don't need the world to confirm anything at all. Women pick up on subtle signals. They feel the energy of a man even before they process his words. And if that energy is frantic, insecure, or desperate for validation, no amount of charm can hide it. But when a man walks into a room with quiet certainty, a woman notices instantly. She may not know why, but she feels a gravitational pull that is hard to explain. Calm confidence is not the absence of fear or insecurity. It's the mastery of it. It's the ability to hold your ground even when the outcome is uncertain. It's the way a man listens. not rushing to respond, not trying to impress with clever lines or exaggerated humor. He listens because he is not afraid of silence. Silence is where insecure men panic, but confident men thrive. A calm pause can say more than a loud sentence. A steady gaze can communicate more than a rehearsed compliment. A relaxed posture can create more connection than forced charm. Women are deeply attuned to emotional states because emotional intelligence is part of their survival system. They evolved to sense the stability of the people around them, especially men. So when a man presents himself with a calm, grounded presence, it signals safety. It signals maturity. It signals that he won't crumble under pressure or become reactive when things get difficult. That feeling is rare, and rare always becomes attractive. A woman doesn't need fireworks. She needs assurance. She needs the emotional consistency of a man who doesn't lose himself just because he likes her. Confidence that is calm is different from confidence that is loud. Loud confidence needs an audience. Calm confidence doesn't need anyone. It's not dependent on being seen. It exists whether someone is watching or not. This is why the calm man doesn't chase attention. He attracts it. He doesn't overshare to fill silence. He speaks with intention. He doesn't rush to impress. He lets his character reveal itself slowly. He doesn't try to be interesting. His depth naturally shows when he isn't trying to be anything else. And the truth is, women are not impressed by what you show. They are impressed by what you control. Your emotions, your tone, your reactions, your patience, your boundaries, your silence. A man who controls himself influences everything around him. A man who doesn't control himself tries to control everything else. The second type exhausts a woman. The first type intrigues her. And that intrigue is what creates magnetism. When a woman meets a man who is calm in his confidence, she feels that she can relax. She feels that she can be more feminine, more open, more expressive. His groundedness becomes a signal that she doesn't have to overthink or protect herself. And that's what allows her to connect. Because connection doesn't come from what a man says, it comes from how a woman feels in his presence. And if she feels steady around him, she will naturally gravitate toward him. Even the way a confident man speaks sets him apart. He doesn't try to dominate the conversation. He doesn't ramble or over-explain. He doesn't try to fill every moment with words. When he talks with clarity. He has nothing to prove. His tone is measured, not rushed. His words are chosen, not scattered. Even if he says very little, his presence says the rest. Women pay attention to men who don't need attention. Because the man who doesn't need attention is the man who doesn't need approval. And the man who doesn't need approval becomes someone she respects by default. Calm confidence also shows up in how a man handles conflict or discomfort. Most men either explode or shut down. But a confident man doesn't react. He responds. Reacting is emotional. Responding is intentional. Women trust men who respond. They fear men who react. And trust is the foundation of attraction. When a man can stay composed even when the conversation becomes difficult, even when the emotions rise, even when things don't go his way, he shows strength. Real strength is the ability to stay aligned with yourself no matter what is happening around you. And this is why calm confidence is so rare. It requires inner work. It requires knowing who you are without needing someone else to validate it. It requires understanding your emotions instead of being controlled by them. It requires discipline, self-awareness, and the willingness to walk away from anything that threatens your peace. Women sense when a man has done this work because it shows in everything he does. This type of man becomes unforgettable, not because he is loud, but because he is stable. Not because he is flashy, but because he is grounded. Not because he seeks attention, but because he doesn't need it. And that is the kind of man women think about long after the conversation is over. The man whose energy left an imprint. So if you want to become the type of man who impacts a woman deeply, stop trying to impress her. Start mastering yourself. Because when you master yourself, everything else aligns naturally. And if you remember nothing else, remember this: a zest calm confidence is louder than any performance. Cultivate it, and the world will respond without you having to shout. There is a moment in every man's life when he realizes that connection has nothing to do with what he says to a woman and everything to do with the energy behind his words. And this is where most men fail. They learn the lines, the techniques, the strategies, thinking that if they say the right thing at the right time, they'll unlock her heart or her attention. But women don't fall for lines. They fall for emotional mastery. They fall for the man whose inner world is disciplined, intentional, and controlled. They fall for the man who doesn't just manage his emotions, but understands them deeply. Emotional mastery is not about suppressing how you feel. It's about owning what you feel so it doesn't own you. When a man hasn't mastered his emotions, everything becomes a reaction. He becomes unstable, unpredictable, uneasy within himself. If she delays her response, he panics. If she pulls back, he gets insecure. If she disagrees with him, he becomes defensive. Without emotional mastery, a man is acted upon by the world instead of being the one acting on it. A woman senses this immediately. She senses whether a man's feelings control him or whether he controls his feelings. And the difference is everything. A man who masters his emotions speaks differently. He doesn't say things to impress her. He speaks from a grounded place, not a needy one. His tone carries steadiness. His words carry intention. And because he is emotionally anchored, she feels drawn to him without understanding why. She feels safe around him because his emotional state isn't dependent on her behavior. That independence, that inner stability, is what draws her closer. Women gravitate toward emotional leaders. They can't help it. Their biology responds to it. Their psychology respects it. Their intuition recognizes it instantly. Emotional mastery shows up in the way a man handles pressure. When something triggers him, he doesn't collapse. When something disappoints him, he doesn't lose his structure. When a woman challenges him, he doesn't take it as an attack. He sees through the surface, responding from clarity rather than reacting from fear. Most men respond emotionally like boys. Their emotions swing wildly, dictated by external events, especially women's actions. But a man who has mastered himself doesn't give his power away like that. He is still, he is measured, he is calm even when life isn't. This calmness doesn't make him passive, it makes him powerful. It gives him the ability to think clearly, to decide wisely, to lead with confidence. Women notice this level of inner discipline. It makes him stand out not because he is trying to be different, but because he is different. His emotional life is not chaotic. It is organized. And that is attractive on a level deeper than words can describe. Think about how many men crumble when a woman tests their boundaries. They panic, they overreact, they become argumentative, or they become overly accommodating. But the man who has mastered himself doesn't fold, he doesn't break. He doesn't let temporary emotional discomfort distort his long-term direction. He can say no calmly. He can walk away calmly. He can communicate calmly. Emotional mastery gives him a kind of authority that cannot be faked. Women respect men who remain emotionally centered, not cold, not detached, centered. That's the difference. A cold man is emotionally shut down, which makes him unsafe. A centered man is emotionally present, but not controlled by his feelings, which makes him deeply trustworthy. Women open up to this kind of man. They become vulnerable around him. They share more. They reveal more. Because his emotional structure gives them the freedom to express themselves without fear. This is what emotional mastery creates. It builds a psychological environment where connection becomes effortless. The man who has emotional mastery also becomes more attractive because he doesn't chase validation. His emotions don't spike when a woman gives him attention, and they don't crash when she withdraws it. He remains stable regardless of her behavior, and that stability is what allows him to truly connect with her on a deeper level. When he expresses interest, it's genuine, not driven by insecurity. When he compliments her, it's sincere, not an attempt to manipulate. When he shares something about himself, it comes from confidence, not desperation. Women sense this authenticity. They sense when a man's intentions are clean and not tied to hidden emotional needs. Emotional mastery frees a man from the trap of needing approval, and that freedom is magnetic. A man who doesn't need validation is rare. A man who doesn't panic emotionally is rare. A man who can hold his emotions without suppressing them is rare. And women are drawn to rarity. This mastery also affects how a man leads in relationships. Emotional leadership is not about control, it's about clarity. It's about guiding interactions with stability and direction. When conflicts arise, he remains composed. When issues surface, he addresses them with maturity. When boundaries need to be set, he does so without aggression. Emotional leadership is the quality that makes a man dependable. It's what makes a woman feel like she can trust him with her vulnerability. Men often misunderstand emotional control as being unemotional. But true emotional mastery is about transforming your emotions, not hiding them. It's about knowing what you feel and choosing how to express it. Choosing, not reacting. That choice is what gives you power, and that power is what gets inside her mind. Women are emotional beings. They live through emotional experience. The man who can navigate emotion with strength becomes unforgettable. You become the calm in the storm. You become the anchor in chaos. You become the presence she can lean into because your emotional world is not fragile or chaotic. This is what makes her attached to you on a deeper level. Not your looks, not your money, not your charm, but your emotional solidity. And if you want to create that kind of connection, start by mastering the one thing most men never learn to control themselves. Remember this. A woman doesn't fall for the man who controls her emotions. She falls for the man who has mastered his own. There's something most men completely overlook, and it's the reason they keep talking, explaining, convincing, performing, without ever truly impacting a woman on a deeper level. They think attraction is built through words. They think connection depends on what they say, how funny they are, how charming they can sound in the moment. But the truth is far more subtle and far more powerful. A woman feels a man's presence long before she registers his words. And a man's presence, his energy, his silence, his emotional structure, often speaks louder than anything he could ever verbalize. Presence is an energy you carry, not something you perform. It's the quiet confidence that radiates from a man who is grounded, self-respecting, and internally aligned. When a man has this kind of presence, he doesn't need to announce himself. He doesn't need to exaggerate his personality. He doesn't need to use words as a weapon or a mask. His presence alone creates trust, intrigue, and emotional impact. Women are perceptive. They feel when someone is trying too hard. They feel when someone is hiding insecurity behind humor. They feel when someone is overcompensating with loudness or bravado. And they also feel when someone is simply real. Presence is honesty, but not the verbal kind, the energetic kind. It's what communicates. I know who I am, and I'm not afraid to be that in front of you. And that level of grounded self-acceptance is rare. Most men speak to impress. A man with presence speaks only when necessary. He listens with full attention. He pauses without panic. He holds eye contact without turning it into a performance. He doesn't rush because his self-worth isn't tied to how quickly he can gain approval. His silence is not empty. It's full of intention, awareness, and emotional steadiness. A woman remembers that energy. She remembers how he made her feel even when he wasn't speaking. She remembers the sense of stability she felt in his presence. She remembers the stillness, the composure, the control. Presence is the language of the masculine. It signals strength without aggression. It signals confidence without arrogance. It signals interest without desperation. When a man communicates through presence, his words become more meaningful because they emerge from a place of emotional clarity. There's a psychological reason presence is so powerful. Human beings detect emotional states through subtle cues, tone, posture, breathing, micro expressions. Women, in particular, have evolved to read these cues with incredible accuracy. Before they analyze your words, they analyze your emotional energy. A man who is jittery, insecure, or over-eager sends signals of instability. A man who is calm, composed, and unhurried sends signals of safety. Safety creates attraction because it creates space for feminine expression, vulnerability, and openness. When a woman feels safe in your presence, she feels more herself. When she feels more herself, she naturally associates those feelings with you. Presence is what allows a man to make a woman feel understood without needing long speeches or complicated strategies. It's the simple act of being fully available in the moment, not distracted, not in your head, not calculating your next move. Presence is undivided attention. And undivided attention is rare in a world full of noise, ego, and superficial conversation. Notice how men who lack presence try to compensate with performance. They talk endlessly, they joke excessively, they brag. They make everything a competition. They try to dominate conversations out of fear that silence will expose them. But silence doesn't expose the confident man, it reveals him. In silence, his energy becomes undeniable. In silence, a woman feels the weight of his presence. In silence, he communicates strength without lifting a finger. That is why a man with presence can say very little and still leave a deeper impact than the man who talks non-stop. Presence also shows up in how a man responds rather than reacts. A man with presence doesn't jump at every emotional spike. He doesn't crumble when challenged. He doesn't feel the need to justify himself at every moment. His ego isn't fragile. He can take a moment, breathe, and respond from clarity rather than insecurity. That emotional steadiness makes him unforgettable, because women don't remember the men who talked the loudest. They remember the men who remained centered. Another powerful aspect of presence is boundary setting. A man with presence doesn't need to argue to enforce his boundaries. His energy communicates that he respects himself. That respect influences how others treat him, including women. A woman is naturally drawn to a man who can say no calmly, without guilt or aggression. His presence tells her he is not afraid of losing her, and that makes him far more attractive than a man who bends under pressure. Presence is also what gives a man influence. Influence is not about controlling others. It's about inspiring a feeling of trust and stability that makes others want to move toward you. A woman invests emotionally in a man whose presence consistently signals strength. She values him. She respects him. She remembers him. Even when he walks away, his presence lingers in her mind because it created an emotional imprint she can't find in anyone else. If you think back to the moments when someone truly impacted you, it was rarely because of their words. It was because of how they carried themselves, because of how you felt in their presence, because of the energy they brought into the room. That's what presence does. It bypasses logic and goes straight to memory. And when a man understands this, really understands it, he no longer wastes energy trying to be impressive. He focuses on becoming internally aligned. He disciplines his emotions. He slows himself down. He becomes intentional. He becomes aware. And that awareness radiates outward, shaping how others experience him. So if you want to stand out, if you want to make a lasting impression, if you want to enter a woman's mind and stay there, work on the one thing most men ignore: the strength of your presence. And remember this: Bitiwasere woman may forget your words, but she will never forget the man whose presence made her feel something real.